currently in today. Um, and as was alluded to earlier, you know, much of what we're going to talk about here today, or what I plan to talk about anyway, is really to talk about the COVID-19 response efforts, both that we are undertaking in collaboration as well with a number of other organizations here locally. So a very important topic right now, and obviously everyone's undergoing a lot of stress. I think the one thing that I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm going to share my screen. And again, this is one of those things that Patty and I went through earlier today. So we'll see if I can find my screen, number one. It worked out pretty well earlier. Here we go. And cool, I can still see all of you as I do this. Okay. Everybody see that okay? Awesome. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. That's the other part. All right. All right. So very good. So I think that, obviously, in this business, economic development, and certainly Amy's business too of tourism, and is, we really try to be cheerleaders for our community. And, a lot of times, even if when things aren't going perfectly, we still present kind of a glass half full perspective of things. And I think we're still doing that, but I think it's going to become a little bit more difficult right now just because we have such a sense of urgency to try to balance this important aspect of maintaining public health and also trying to salvage our economy in the meantime. And I heard somebody say the other day that, obviously we need good public health. So we have active participants in the economy, but we also need a healthy economy in order to support the public health efforts that we are undertaking. So I really don't envy our leaders that are trying to balance this, and I respect them for trying to do that because this is not an easy time at all. I think from our standpoint as an organization, I would say since the beginning of this, anyone that had a role within our organization has really modified their day-to-day around, okay, what is their new role? What is their new role within the organization of participating in a solution, not to the pandemic, but the solution that many companies and communities in the greater Oshkosh region are facing right now, which is just viability, sustainability, and in some cases, their ultimate survival to persist through the challenges that we're currently being faced. And so everybody on our team, from Art, who was maintaining a very different role now and is administering one of our loan funds that we've created in the last month, basically a couple of weeks, to also a new member of our team who's maintaining another fund. Everybody in our team has really reshaped their role around addressing the issues surrounding COVID-19. So it's really been an all hands on deck aspect as far as we're concerned. The timeline of COVID-19, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think everyone is certainly very aware of what's going on right now. But I think it's also, it would surprise a lot of people too to realize that this has not been going on very long. The February 5th was the date that the first Wisconsin resident was confirmed with COVID-19. And it wasn't until March 2nd that the second confirmed case in Wisconsin was identified. So really it wasn't until March 12th, a little over a month ago, that the governor declared a public health emergency as those cases rose to 7. And obviously we know what happened from there. The next day, the president declared it a pandemic. As far as a national emergency is concerned, Governor Evers announced that schools would close at that time with the intent of reopening in early April, perhaps, but then eventually declared them to close through the school year. And then March 17th is the date I think many of folks would and our businesses relate to, which is the day that, and also the 23rd, is when bars and restaurants, and then ultimately the Safer Home order was in effect, banning non-essential business and travel um, from continuing in the state of Wisconsin. And then, of course, April 15th is when that Safer Home at Home order was extended until May 26th. So, um, we're really kind of, when you take it from, the 13th, 17th through the 26th, we're really kind of in the middle of that right now, and not sure where this ride is going to take us. Um, that's the one thing we don't control, obviously, is the virus. So COVID-19 in Wisconsin, there's a very good source if you want to know what's really happening in the state of Wisconsin, and the impact of COVID-19. I wouldn't recommend this if you want to feel good about the state of things, but certainly if you want a real realistic look of what the impact is on the economy right now. Noah Williams is an economist and has appeared in a lot of webinars, and maybe you've seen him recently. And does a real nice analysis of what the impact that COVID-19 is having on the state of Wisconsin. And you can really see, just a month and a half ago, we were having the conversation with employers about, okay, we're at historically low unemployment. How do we fill your talent needs? Fast forward through today, where the projected unemployment is growing well above 15%. So, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but obviously, much of it is really related to COVID-19 and public policies that want people to stay home, and certainly companies that feel the need right now to temporarily lay off or furlough their workforce. So that really tells part of the story, at least from an employment aspect. And then yesterday, UW Oshkosh unveiled the findings of their survey, round one, and partnering with other organizations around the state to understand the full impact of this in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What was found was 35% of Wisconsin businesses who responded to the survey believe that they will be forced to close if the current conditions persist for more than 3 months. And of course, as you can see, the period that the responses were taken was April 1st to the 10th. And then as it goes along, as you can see there, some of the economic impact numbers that played into it from the 2,550 responses that came forward from the 63 counties in the state of Wisconsin. The one thing I think is, if there is a reassuring bullet here, is that I think some of our response actions have proven to meet the needs, or will prove to meet the needs that some of the respondents had, such as forming low interest loan funds, grants, and then some things that we're doing to help them connect with their suppliers and customers as a state. If you want more information about the survey, there's a link there, and the survey goes on. The current round is still open to respondents, and as those responses come forward, they will add that to this data, and those who have responded will get a second round of survey questions to better analyze, okay, in the next phase of this, have these numbers changed in the next phase? Do companies feel any more reassured, or are they more concerned, or is it pretty much the status quo as we've gone along? And some of these tools have come in play, and also as the virus and some of the stay-at-home orders related to the virus continue for the coming weeks. Just wanted to make real quick note of some of the programs that have been adopted at the state and federal levels. I'm not an expert in any of these programs, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. If you want to discuss them at the end, I'm happy to do that. I think one of the things that, I've always said is, in my history as an economic development professional, I've had many people come in our office or the various offices where I've worked and have said, I want to start a business, or I have a business and I'm looking for a grant. Where's the fun with the grant money? And I've always said, well, if there were such a fund, it would be empty because everyone would go after the grant money. And I think that as we're finding out, that's definitely true in the current scenario with the programs that have been adopted for the COVID-19 response for companies. And that is many of these companies currently either don't have any money or in the process of receiving legislative approval for another round of funding. The first one, I think, to be adopted right out of the chute was the state of Wisconsin. They adopted the Small Business 2020 program. By their own acknowledgement, this was not a perfect program. It did not have a lot of money. States don't have the coffers that and the ability to create money that the federal level does. So this was a very small fund. I think it was a grant of 20 to 25, probably $20,000 that was made available to clients of CDFIs around the state, which probably didn't impact 95% of companies in the state of Wisconsin. But nonetheless, it was an attempt by the state to put something on the table to start helping companies through this situation. The SBA, and these are the programs I think most people have gone after as of late through the CARES Act, both for the Paycheck Protection Program, which a lot of it was related to helping companies retain their workforce and receiving a low interest loan to retain their workforce and continuing to pay their people and not have to lay them off necessarily. And the big attractive part of that is that if they were to maintain or spend a good part of the Paycheck Protection Program money, PPP, on their workforce, on salaries, and much of that is expected to be forgiven at the end of the loan closeout. And then the second one is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, EIDL, as many people know it. And that involves a two-part approach. One is a grant up to $10,000, and then a loan beyond $10,000. So they call that the $10,000 advance, and then a loan above and beyond the $10,000 for needs that the company might have during this time. Both programs at this point do not have any money, and the Senate did act on Tuesday to replenish these funds. The House is expected to adopt, or not adopt, but pass the Senate bill, I believe, as soon as today. I'm not sure how that's going or what amendments, if any. I doubt that there will be any amendments because I doubt the Senate wants to come back and deal with this again. But nonetheless, as soon as this weekend, both of these programs should have money available to potential borrowers. I'm expecting that there's probably a big backlog of people who couldn't get into round one that probably have already applied with their lender and probably are just waiting for money to become available. I think the big thing to know about these two programs is that the Paycheck Protection Program, you have to see your lender directly to apply for that program. And the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is filled out online on the SBA's website. So a very important distinction there. And there are other eligibility requirements. I think businesses, for the most part, can apply for either one. If you're a nonprofit, depending on your classification, you can apply for one or both, or but in many cases not both. So so that's just a little bit background there. And then a couple other things, a couple other programs is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. I mentioned this as a business tool because many sole proprietors and self-employed individuals cannot claim unemployment under the traditional unemployment program cannot claim unemployment benefits. So the pandemic unemployment assistance does make unemployment benefits available to such individuals. So uh, that is obviously very important for our sole proprietors, again, and our entrepreneurs. And then the last one is the Safe Small Business Fund. And again, this is another program that was launched, and quickly funding was depleted. I think as soon as we had posted on our Facebook page a couple days ago, because there were only certain parts of our community that were eligible, 54901 and 54902, companies located in those zip codes that were eligible. It is now closed down because funding is now no longer available. It has all either been taken or they had a huge rush of applicants. So that's just kind of a mixed bag there. I think the keynote takeaway there is that there's a lot of state and federal entities that are in partnerships that are really trying to address this situation. My own editorial on this is it's going to be very difficult to sustain through this pandemic with government programs because I'm not sure how many rounds we can continue to sustain, but nonetheless, these, I would say the SBA programs are the ones that have been most attractive at this point in time. A couple tools that we have implemented, the Greater Oshkosh COVID-19 Emergency Response Loan. I'll say that within a couple weeks, with our collective efforts as a community, we have been able to make $1.8 million available to small businesses in Oshkosh, Greater Oshkosh, and Winnebago County. This was the first fund out of the chute, or I shouldn't say one of the first. I'm going to mention a couple others here in a second. But the reason I started to say the first is because this is available to all companies in all sectors, business sectors in our community. So how it started is less important, that it is in fact there as a resource for our companies, but nonetheless, the first $300,000 was seeded by $50,000 from our organization and $250,000 from the city's revolving loan fund that the Common Council had reallocated for this purpose. So as of now, we've been working off of that $300,000. Recently, the city also amended one of their TIF districts, which just so happens to have be centered on the 100 North Main building, which is where our office is located, not because of that reason, just because that's where the origination of the TIF was for the 100 block of North Main. And so there's also dollars available for companies within a half mile of our building. So a lot of downtown, the bid area, for example, companies within the business improvement district are eligible also to apply specifically for a pool of money from this program. In fact, at 1 o'clock, I'm jumping onto another webinar with our bid businesses to talk about that component of this program. I also expect another $500,000, and this is where I kind of get my math to add up the 1.8 million. 500,000 from 2 other TIFs around the city with that have reserves. And by April 28th, I expect the Common Council to approve that. And so that would mean that this fund has over $1 million of financial support for companies within the Greater Oshkosh region, which also includes the towns of Oshkosh, Algoma, Blackwolf, and Nakai Mines. The TIF 16 map, this is the TIF that has been approved by the city to reallocate those dollars to this emergency fund program within a half mile of 100 North Main. So if you are within that circle, you are eligible for that portion of the emergency loan fund program. A couple bits and pieces about that program is you can apply for dollars up to $10,000. The interest is 2% over 3 years. We're not expecting any payments back to us into this fund. for 6 months. No principal, no interest payments for 6 months. No closing costs or penalties for early repayment. So I think that's very important. One of the things I've been telling people, and I would not say this in normal times, but people have said, what should we apply for? And I've been telling people, apply for everything. We're in a different time and day and age now where, again, that statistic of 35% of our companies potentially going under, I believe that in the conversations that I'm having with companies right now. So these are non-traditional, flexible loan programs. I've talked to companies that do not want to take out a loan. I get it. You do not want to take on debt, especially when this was something that was not caused by the conditions of the business. It was caused by a response to a pandemic. But these are different times, and you may need some of these programs to save your business. And I think that's really been encouraging of companies to apply at this point. The process is ongoing applications. Companies can apply every Tuesday. They can send in an completed application that they can find on our website to Tricia Rathermel, and her email address is listed there. If you have any questions for her, you can also call her. So that's every Tuesday. Our team will then review those applications, make sure that they are complete, and then the committee will review the applications and interview the applicants on Thursday, and then give either a thumbs up, thumbs down, or will ask the applicant for more information. Just from this program so far in the first couple of weeks, we've been able to disperse money to 3 applicants, $30,000 of awards. 4 applicants are in the hopper to be reviewed. I think a couple of them were earlier today, but there is $500,000 available currently in this fund. So I've had the question a few times, which is there still money available? There is money available, and you don't have to worry about, at this point, dollars running out. So please encourage folks to apply. This could be a resource. A quick comment from Nathaniel Frank, M Toxins. Many might know them as the Snake and Scorpion Venom Lab on Oregon that opened a few months ago, and they were scheduled to have an open house in May. And we were happy to help them because obviously we want them to still get off to the best start possible. And they've had some trouble with some overseas, vendors that they've had to deal with in terms of, travel restrictions and whatnot. And this has been very helpful for them to sustain through the current crisis. I wanted to also allude to a program that was even before that one that was rolled out. That's the Oshkosh Chambers Bar and Restaurant Emergency Microloan Program. My understanding is that there have been roughly 12 loans that have been made from this program so far. They will loan money up to $2,500, and you can see the interest rates, and also they are not expecting any payments as well for a while. And so you can reach out to Rob Clayman at the Oshkosh Chamber, contact information there if you have any questions about that program. And then finally, within a collaboration between our organization, Winnebago County, the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce, and the Fox Cities Regional Partnership, we were able to leverage another $750,000 in assistance from the Winnebago County Revolving Loan Fund that was siphoned off from that fund and made available countywide for companies and businesses that basically kind of face the same kind of criteria, meet the same kind of criteria as the Greater Oshkosh Emergency Loan Fund in helping organizations with their fixed costs. Again, utilities, rent, insurance. So I heard somebody say yesterday that the bill collector it turns out is an essential employee. So you are most likely going to continue to get bills if you're a small business owner. That part has not stopped. So um, again, the same amount up to $10,000 is available for businesses during this time, countywide, not just Greater Oshkosh, countywide. So we've we've had a lot of traction from this fund to date. Been 11 loans that have been made and approved to date. One was not approved. So these aren't all slam dunks. In some cases, the applicant does need to sometimes go back and provide more information to us. They do have an opportunity to reapply, and 2 applications are currently on hold. So we expect tomorrow's meeting to also have a couple, actually today, this afternoon yet, at 2 o'clock, for a couple more approvals to be made to applicants. So right now there's still roughly $700,000 available, and $105,000 awarded to date. Actually, there's $645,000, excuse me, in terms of a balance remaining in this fund. So again, money is available. It's there for anyone who needs it from a business standpoint. Just real quick, same process for the most part. The only difference between this one and the Greater Oshkosh Emergency Fund is that applicants are not interviewed for the Winnebago County Rapid Recovery Program. I think it's also worth mentioning too is that closing comes pretty quickly. A lot of times in these funds, closing can take potentially weeks. We're able to close, assuming, for example, we approve 2 loans this afternoon. We believe we can close and have a check to the borrower as soon as Monday or Tuesday of next week. So very quick, very nimble, and very flexible. Obviously, again, it serves as gap financing. We understand that a lot of borrowers are not going to be able to, with no revenue coming in for many of them, or less revenue, more difficult to get a bank loan right now. And this all continues to serve as a gap, a bridge to get to the current crisis. And I think I also want to mention too, give a plug to the Small Business Development Center at UW Oshkosh. Colleen Merrill, who is more expert than I am at the Small Business Administration programs. So feel free to call her to get advice, or email her most likely. That's probably the best way to reach her now, since UW Oshkosh is pretty vacant at this point, the offices anyway. But I would email her. One of the things I think that she can help with is helping companies through their current cash flow situation. Because whether you have money on hand or not, or you're getting money from these programs or not, chances are somewhere along the line here, you're going to try to deal with, okay, how do I manage the available cash that I have? And she and her team can be a very good resource for that. So I would encourage anyone that's looking to borrow money to visit with Colleen and get some advice in terms of how you can work through the fundamentals of your company during this new time that we're now all operating in. And these are just kind of a few things that I just kind of came up with, and just some things that just have kind of come to the realization of after talking to a number of companies and businesses and organizations, and working with and partnering with others. And that is, the one thing I think we can all acknowledge is that there's a lot of things that are out of our control, and it gives us a little bit more peace of mind when we know what can we control and what can we not control. And one thing obviously we can't control is, how long is the safer at home order going to be in effect? What businesses are essential versus not essential? The efforts to contain the virus, which we are all trying to do our part with social distancing and wearing masks in public, or gloves, or staying at home. you know, those are things that we're trying to do. But I think that the things that there's a lot of things that we can't control related to the virus. So we want to be able to deal with the things that we can't control. And one of the things we can't control is our own decision making. You know, I talked to a owner of a bar earlier, and I think she's going to be an applicant to our Greater Oshkosh Emergency Response Fund. But you know, it's kind of sympathizing. We're kind of sympathizing with each other, really, in our phone call. But you know, she said, "Look, you know, I'm now doing things I never had the time to do. You know, I always thought about delivery. I always thought about working on aspects of my business. Now I have the time to do it. Delivery never would have made any sense to me," she said, "as a business owner, because there's just not enough profit, not enough margin there in it for me. But now I'm doing it out of necessity, and I'm learning new things about my company, about my business, about things I can do better, things that I can take with me once I reopen." So, you know, again, those are decisions. That's a decision she is making to improve her business. And I think that companies who do that, I think are going to be better off when we emerge from this. If the decision for a business owner is whether to shut your business down or not, I would encourage business owners to check out every available resource at your disposal. And I mentioned a few of them earlier, but please talk to us, talk to Colleen, talk to somebody before that ultimate decision is made. And I think this is an important question too. What does reopening your business mean to your business, i.e. your customers, your employees, and your suppliers? And yesterday I was on a call with a group of resource partners, and Barb Lemieux of New North made a good point, which is obviously every business owner wants to be able to open, because obviously if you're not open, you're not earning revenue, you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your staff, you can't ensure your longevity as an organization. But is that truly the ultimate goal? In this climate, it's also important to give confidence to your customers, employees, your suppliers, whoever walks in your door, whoever you deal with on an interpersonal basis, that you have taken those steps necessary for the safety and the protection of everybody. And so that's a different way of thinking than just saying, well, I'm going to open or not open. And what does that mean? So I think in the days ahead, those are some of the introspective things I think a lot of our business owners are going to have to work through. And then finally, regardless of what policies are enacted, just know that obviously our community will emerge stronger from this. And there's a lot of good success stories that are being told. There's a lot of you that are part of that success story for our community right now. There's business owners that are donating things, and obviously we know what's going on with our healthcare institutions, but there's a lot of good that's happening in our community right now that people are doing because they never had the time to do it, or they care about their fellow individual, fellow member of their community, fellow business. And I think that those are things that give me personally a lot of hope for being able to emerge from this crisis stronger than we were when we went into it. So those are just a couple of just nuggets, takeaways from my standpoint. But I'm going to pause right now and see if anybody has any questions.
We do have a few questions. When I call on you, will you please unmute yourself and then ask Jason the question for you, or yourself? Karen Schneider had a question. Karen?
Did you get the unmute button? Can you hear me? No.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. So Jason, can you give us an idea of the percentage of applications that are coming in that are receiving funding?
I'd say it's probably well over 90% right now. You know, again, I think the hope is to be able to help as many companies as possible. You know, again, you know, the application process does require folks to, you know, submit information about financials and their history and whatnot. So there's still that aspect of it on the front end. And we do have a committee that review different committee from one to the other, but there is two separate committees that are reviewing those applications, and they are asking questions. And so I would say the one thing that is important is, somebody said, well, okay, well, how do I know about my chances of getting support? Well, I would say that if you're an organization that is struggling largely because of the pandemic now, because of it, and you were doing okay, I mean, as a business prior, or holding your own, and the pandemic was the cause of your downfall at this point, or a big contributor, chances are you're going to get funding. I would say that if you're an organization that was struggling before and now is their current situation is the same as a result of the pandemic, then I would say that maybe you're going to be viewed a little bit differently. But I think the goal is to try to help as many companies as possible. So I think someone who really tries and is dedicated for completeness to a strong application is most likely going to get support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Jolene Hukert.
I just wanted to ask if people can apply for both the Winnebago County and the Oshkosh loan. So if it's 10,000 max for each, can they get a total of 20, or do you direct people one way or the other?
Yeah, we just had a situation arise just like that. And we did have an applicant that we approved, I believe, with the Greater Oshkosh Emergency Fund. And then they did also apply for the Winnebago Rapid Recovery Program. And so, we had a discussion about whether or not we wanted to allow that. And again, it's the same thing as before, which was the question was, would the borrower, is it a viable business that we believe will be able to repay their loan once this is over? That we believe and have a confidence in that. And if that was the case, then there was really no reason why we should deny somebody a loan from both programs, from either program. So that individual did receive support, or we do expect to receive support from both programs. I think the caveat to that is that the Winnebago County Recovery Program is only 40% of those funds can be loaned to businesses within the city of Oshkosh. They recognize that there was another program with the Greater Oshkosh program that does make loans to companies in Oshkosh, that they wanted to make sure that there was enough money for the Winnebago program to support businesses throughout the county, outside of Oshkosh.
Manny Vasquez.
Hi, Jason. Any idea how many businesses in the Greater Oshkosh region will permanently close as a result of COVID?
I haven't dove too deep within the survey results of UW Oshkosh. I'm not sure if they have separated that out based on geography or not, the respondents, but I plan to talk to them about that. I'd like to know, I don't know if anyone from the UW Oshkosh is on this webinar, but I'd like to know from Jeff and Carrie if they have any details about that. I don't have any details specifically for Oshkosh or Greater Oshkosh or even Winnebago County. Just the regional results.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. And then Ann Steiner also had a question, but she doesn't have access to a microphone. If you get approved for the loan and are able to pay it off before the 6-month deferral, is there still an interest charge?
I do not believe, well, that's a good question. I'll have to get back to Ann on that. Actually, Ann's on one of our committees, so maybe Ann can maybe help me out with that one. But I'm hearing from the peanut gallery, the answer is no. There is no interest or owed that will accrue before that 6-month period is up.
Okay. And then it looks like last question from Sean Dockery.
Hey, Jason. asking a question. When these PPP loans are mature after the 6 months is up, who's auditing these? And then I guess when are they going to decide if they have to pay it back or not? Because obviously in 6 months the payments are going to start right away. Do you have to apply for that audit, or what's kind of going to happen on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, maybe I might turn it back to anyone else on this call that maybe has information on that too. I don't have good information. I was talking to my lender. That seems to be one of the most asked questions, number one, but also one of the most fuzzy areas of this whole thing is, how do you ultimately determine the the payback of that, whether it's you need to pay it back or whether it's ultimately completely forgivable. Obviously, there's a big difference between the two. So even at 1%. So I think that from what I understand is that businesses that receive a PPP loan should very well document how they spend it. And the more they can show that they spent it on payroll, the larger their chance is that they will receive some or all of that loan as a forgivable portion.
Hey, Jason, this is Will. I can help a little bit with that too. The tough part is we haven't gotten final guidance from the SBA on here's the exact process. I guess what I've been recommending to people is account for your spend on the payroll and related expenses in a similar way to the way that you did in the application process. And that's probably as deep as we're going to have to go, but we don't know that for sure. But I think at the 7 or 8 week mark, you're able to apply for the forgiveness part, and then it's up to whatever financial institution or whoever the party was that you got the PPP loan through to do the measurement for the loan forgiveness portion. And again, the tricky part is we don't have all those pieces yet to firm up here's exactly what that process is going to be yet, because we don't have those rules yet.
Thanks, Will. Jason, do you have anything to add?
No, I think, well, to that, I think Will answered it probably better than I could as a lender. I think I had seen that the documentation hasn't been made available yet for that, but yeah, I think obviously that program, I think there's gonna be strong interest in this next round once the money becomes available. So.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we are out of questions. Thanks, Jason, so much for speaking today. We really appreciate all of your information. And thank you everyone for attending today. Just a reminder that our next meeting is scheduled for June 4th. Hopefully we'll be back at LaShores, but maybe it'll be this way again. We'll find that out soon, hopefully. And that meeting will be with Patty Andreessen-Shue and Julie Conrad regarding the Oshkosh Area School District. So hope you guys all can make it.